Hey there, Boots Owen here. I found this little fellow, a Wylex electric curling tongs in a skip recently. And this video is not about the curling tongs, but they are a bit of a vintage novelty. I don't think they ever saw much action. Vintage elastic bands. Smell of old about them. It is a 20 watt unit, if you can see there. Type 171 double insulated curling tongs. It's just a heater with a clip on the outside of it. Made by Wylex, there you go. But what I thought was cool about it was the plug. Look at this fellow. It's a Wylex 2 amp plug with a nice pattern all around it there. Made in England. Wylex 2 amp fused plug, non-track, and it's got two connectors and an enormous, or two contacts, or what would you call them, two pins and an enormous pin in the center. And there's a website called the Museum of, what do we call it, plugsandsocketmuseum.nl that has an article about these fellows. And I learned a little bit about them. I'll show you a bit of it on my phone there if it shows up. But basically, some of the plugs had sockets in the back of the plug, so you could stack them up and do things like that with them. These were only in the UK, only a long time ago before the standard UK plug came in. And I just want to have a look at it. So let's get into it here with you. There's two screws, hopefully they'll all come out okay. So this is a vintage item, and the house that this was at seemed to be quite old, and I wonder if I went and knocked on it, would it even have sockets like this still in it? But nothing else in the house came out with a plug like this. There was some trash. Oh, okay, so they just fall straight out. So 2AM18, 2A.M18, and then 5A.M 19/4. So I think maybe they're the same size or something, but this one, 2AM and 5AM, I presume 2 is amp. Don't know. In here, it's I don't think it's Bakelite, I think it's some kind of phenolic plastic, but I'm already out of my depth. A little Wylex fuse in the fuse holder. Hopefully it's a 5 amp fuse and a 2 amp plug. Well, there you go. And look at that, the way they've wired it, there's even loose wires coming across, so the fuse may be doing practically nothing there. Friction fit. So there's threads in here. I don't know if you want to see that on this camera. There's threads in here in the Bakelite or phenolic that what's going on there? That's alive as well. Need to have a think about this. What was I saying? The screws don't have inserts, they just thread straight into the plastic and must get adequate grip. Fuse, screws. So I was looking at this, the earth seems to be quite simple, it just goes straight into that pin in the center. But these prongs here, this is the neutral, and it goes straight to the neutral. Interesting that the cables, I guess they're for Wylex, they're continental. The cables are brown and blue, even though in the days when this was wired in England, where it was found, and where these would only have been common, these Wylex plugs, they would have been on black and red back then. It has 295 written here in the plastic. So let's just see how this works, because there's a riveted brass pin here, and it appears that the live screws into that, does it? Because it might not be wired correctly. It doesn't appear to be self-explanatory, but I would have said that this pin here, this screw here, goes directly through to this pin, so I'm going to have to check for continuity here. I wonder, is this wired incorrectly, so it's just basically wired hot without the fuse? Not hot, but, well, it is hot wired because it doesn't have a fuse in place, so you basically bypass the fuse. I think that's what they've done, you know. Yeah, that's the track of the pin, and that's got a brass insert in it here to hold this fellow. But I suspect, yeah, you have N, E, and L. So I suspect you're supposed to wire your to wire your cable or your flex into the L part here rather than down here, because otherwise the fuse is completely redundant. Why it would be a 5 amp then in that case and not a 2 amp is a different issue altogether. Now, where did that washer come from? Because there's no washer on the other side. The washer probably came from the top, where it should have the wire to. And it seems to have enough space that you can just hop the wire across the top, which is different to modern plugs. So let's get that wire out of the way. What I'm going to do, I'm going to take this off because it doesn't... I'm going to keep this as a novelty. So I do not need it to be connected to the Moulinex unit anymore. So let's disconnect that. And it's just an artifact then that it was wired incorrectly. So let's get this one with the washer up here. I'm not sure where the washer is meant to go, but put it up here. If you've ever seen a screwdriver like this before, this is a size number 1 Atlanta screwdriver, and it has a swiveling head, so the head stays put in your palm and then you rotate that with your fingers and it's quite pleasant to use. Now this guy here, stop waffling. This guy's just the fuse holder to the pin, so it shouldn't have any flex wired to it. But of course, if you're cutting your flex, you're not going to cut an extra long live, are you? No, the washer must go there because that is now loose. After all. The screws appear to be the same length, but this one is loose. My fumbly fingers won't get this into place. Right, so yeah, I believe the wire should be wired up to the top, and that way the path of the current would go through the fuse rather than just completely sidestepping it. So there you go, 7 minutes of your time. I might edit this video a bit shorter. There we go. Put the 5 amp fuse back in. Wrong fuse. Just snaps in. Tighten up these cable restraints a little bit. And not much more to say really. Quite an attractive little item. It'll go into my drawer with my collection of vintage plugs that I don't need and have no business using. They're just antiques at this point. I don't know who would want such a thing in their home anymore. Although there's no reason, if you have this wired in, squeak, squeak, squeak goes the screwdriver. If you have this wired into your house, it's completely safe as long as you've got a fuse in it and your wiring's up to scratch. I won't say up to code, because the code would be the code of the day, but as long as your cross-sectional areas of cable are able to carry the current, there shouldn't be any issue. It says non-track there. I don't know what that means. Right. 2 amp Wylex fused plug. Completely obsolete and only intended for the UK. Questions or comments, leave them below. Thanks for watching. See you later.